I honestly would be really tempted to go back and check how many times the word Summertide was said in this book. Astronomical. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about Summertide by Charles Sheffield. And this was a recommendation from Mike Molman, and he sent this over. I had commented a while back. I was sort of in a sci-fi mood, and I was specifically looking for something a little bit harder sci-fi and that kind of thing because I just was in the mood for that. And I found that hard sci-fi, when I want that, I really want that, and not other types of sci-fi. And this is a 90s sci-fi, and 90s tends to be my sort of fantasy niche. I thought this was going to be a really interesting one to check out. And overall, I did enjoy this one, and it was weird because it did a lot of things that I actually really like in the sci-fi, but also just I had some issues with as well. And so I ended up, like, I thought this was okay. I am curious to continue because apparently this is a 5-book series, and I think that's part of it. This is a book one. It's doing a lot of setup for a larger series, so I'd be curious to go. And I think seeing what I feel about the continuations would probably give me a better idea about how I'm going to feel overall. But let's talk about it a little bit about what it is and my thoughts on it, and go from there. So Summertide takes place in the far future and is specifically around these two planets, Opal and Quake. And the titular Summertide happens when they're orbiting closer to the sun and the tidal forces are out of control. Specifically on Quake, it's like life is pretty screwed and nobody is supposed to be able to survive. And like any life there has to adapt and either die off but have their eggs laid somewhere safe or something like that because it's these crazy forces. And the administrator who's been there for a while and then the new one that was just sent are having to deal with quite a few people all of a sudden wanting to go there, specifically around Summertide, which is not normal, and kind of figure out what's happening there. And so we have lots of different parties all interested for different reasons and trying to kind of figure out what's going to be happening there with what's going on. So the thing that I usually really like, and I think was interesting here with sci-fi, is the kind of the premise too around this is there are a group of people called the Builders, and in the prologue for this is kind of the discovery of these planets, and there's all of this incredibly advanced technology that's there, and they found these different planets, these different places that have these artifacts, some of which they can figure out how they work, some of which they can't, but the people who built them are just gone completely, and so they're called the Builders, and they still, their technology is way more advanced than anything that people have even at this point. And that's something I tend to like, that idea, like the ancients, in both my sci-fi and my fantasy. I don't know, for some reason that's a trope that works for me. You know, for example, in sci-fi medium, Stargate, absolutely love the Stargate shows. That was a big part, obviously, the ancients there with their technology. But so I think there's a lot you can do there. And so I really enjoyed that. And there are also, you can't really call them anything but info dumps because they absolutely are, in a kind of hilariously blunt way, because you will just get passages where it just is giving you basically like an encyclopedia entry on this particular artifact and explaining the history of it and the details of it. And there's a part of me that's like, oh, that's really interesting. And there's a part of me like, are you really reading an encyclopedia right now to me? And so it's just like, I don't know. It's one of those things too where it's something that I really like, but that maybe wasn't executed in the best possible way. But those technologies are kind of a really big part because there's some sort of grand convergence that's going to be happening that somehow relates to this builder technology, but nobody knows exactly why. And so all of these different people are trying to find out why, and that's kind of where we go. So it has a little bit of that, you know, all these different people with their different interests going on. And that's a part of what we're seeing. Now, I feel like as far as the different parties, there's a little bit too much because we have, you know, we open with a scientist and she is an expert in builder technology, and so she's figured out something is going to happen, so wants to go there. We also have like a kind of interplanetary policing kind of person who's after some fugitives and trying to find them and thinks they ran there. You have some interesting alien species that are also going there, and you have another person who's there because they also figured out something happened. And we're introducing quite a lot of people, and it felt like it was just, again, a little bit much. This is a rather short book as well. I think the physical is maybe around 300 pages. I did do audio for this, I should note, which the audio was like meh, so it's not really even worth talking about. Overall, it was fine, not bad, not good. But the actual like all of the different factions, different people. I just think it felt a little bit rushed, and we could have probably explored a little bit more. But with the like random bits of very slow, the fast paced I think also helped balance that out quite a lot as well. There also are thematically some exploration of what it means to be intelligent life, and there's some discussion on these different types of alien species and their cultures and the way that they work and the way that they look at things differently. And I really enjoyed those conversations as well. I think it was super, super interesting to look at. Like there's, for example, this type of species where they only communicate via like pheromones and scents and smells, and so they have no way of communicating with humans. There's a fantastic line that they would have probably been at war with the humans if either side could find anything to start a war about, because they were just so different. They lived on different kind of planets, they did different kinds of resources, just everything. There was no clash, and I thought that was honestly a really, really fantastic line. But then they communicate through another species who is just completely suborned to just be able to interpret their thoughts through their communication and then communicate with others. And there's some other kind of looks at that type of thing, so we kind of are exploring that as well. And again, it's interesting in the idea of, you know, what makes an intelligent species, the idea of autonomy, some interesting things happening thematically, but there's just so much going on that it felt like we were really rushed with the exploration of that as well. And so that kind of came in together. Now, the ending of this, really interesting, and that's the draw that I definitely want to know what happens next. And I think as well too, when you're going for kind of fast-paced sci-fi with some of those elements, with some of the hard sci-fi elements, although this doesn't go super hard with the sci-fi, because a lot of the technology we don't really know how it works, although there's some specific things mentioned as well. But I think it overall was an enjoyable read for me. This was about 3 stars. Like, I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. There were some things I didn't like. There were some things I really liked, and so kind of fell in the middle. So definitely give me the draw to check out the next one. I think if you like 90s sci-fi, I haven't probably read a lot of 90s sci-fi, but this somehow, you know, felt right as being 90s sci-fi, if that makes any sense, with that kind of feeling. I think there's a lot to enjoy here. Overall, I would have liked to see things explored more, but considering this is book 1 in a 5-book series, like I said, I think seeing, are we going to explore more of these things? Are we really just trying to tee things up so we can explore them more later? I think that'll make a lot of sense. I'll have to see as I continue with this series, if we get more of that, we kind of explore more of these items, or if it's kind of the same thing, and that's kind of hard to know until I do continue. Overall, though, those are my thoughts on Summertide by Charles Sheffield. Let me know if you've read this, or if I'm right about 90s sci-fi as well, or if you have any sci-fi recs. I don't typically do a ton of sci-fi, but I've been throwing it a little bit more lately, and I might continue doing a little bit here and there. We'll have to see, but so let me know your thoughts on this, or that kind of sci-fi as well, or what kind of tropes that you like to see in sci-fi. Would love to hear from you in the comments. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizardly Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.